The Hunter's Web. 6 months had passed since Zara's rescue, and the Liberator felt more like home than any place she had known since New Zephyr. Her luminescent patterns now pulsed with confidence rather than fear, cycling through warm golds and steady blues as she worked at the communication station on the bridge. She had become proficient at intercepting slave trader communications, her natural empathic abilities helping her distinguish between genuine distress calls and traps. "Incoming transmission on the encrypted channel," she announced, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls with practiced ease. "It's from Lyra." Captain Decker looked up from the tactical display where he had been plotting their next rescue mission. "Put it through." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a woman with intricate tattoos covering half her face and cybernetic implants glowing softly at her temples. Lyra Moon Whisper was one of their most valuable contacts in the underground network, a IRA former information broker who had turned against the slave trade after witnessing one too many atrocities. "Thorn?" Lyra's voice carried the slight electronic distortion of a scrambled signal. "I have something big. Depot Station Karis? They're processing a massive shipment, over 300 captives from the recent Tau Ceti raids." Zara felt her patterns flicker with anger. The Tau Ceti system had been hit hard 2 weeks ago. Entire worlds stripped of their populations in coordinated attacks that the authorities were still claiming were pirate activity. "What's the security situation?" Captain Decker asked, his weathered face grim. "Heavy, but manageable for a team your size. The station's in the Veil Nebula. Sensors will be limited, giving you cover for approach. I'm transmitting coordinates and guard rotations now." Finn looked up from his engineering station, concern evident in his young features. "The Veil Nebula is dangerous territory. Lots of gravitational anomalies, and it's crawling with patrol ships." "Which is exactly why they chose it," Nyx interjected, her holographic form materializing beside the view screen. "Perfect place to hide a major operation." Zara studied the tactical data as it scrolled across her display. Something felt wrong, though she couldn't immediately identify what. The information was too complete, too convenient. In her months of working with the underground network, she had learned that good intelligence was usually fragmentary and hard-won. "Lyra," she said, carefully, "how did you obtain this information? The security details are very specific." The information broker's cybernetic implants flickered slightly, a tell that Zara had learned to recognize after months of reading micro-expressions and body language. "I have my sources. Does it matter as long as we can save those people?" "It matters if it gets us killed," Captain Decker said bluntly. "But 300 lives, we can't ignore that." After the transmission ended, the crew gathered in the common area to plan their approach. Zara spread holographic schematics of Depot Station Karis across the central table, highlighting potential entry points and escape routes. She had become skilled at tactical analysis, her empathic abilities allowing her to anticipate how guards might react under pressure. "The main detention area is here," she indicated with a gesture that made her patterns pulse with focused concentration. "If we can disable the central security hub, we should be able to release all the holding cells simultaneously." "I can handle the electronic locks," Finn added, pulling up technical specifications. "But we'll need a distraction to get close enough to the hub." "Leave that to me," Captain Decker said. "I'll create some noise on the opposite side of the station. Once you're inside, you'll have maybe 20 minutes before they reorganize their response." Zara felt a familiar flutter of anxiety in her chest, but it was different now. The nervousness of someone preparing for a dangerous but necessary mission rather than the helpless terror of a victim. "What if it's a trap? Then we spring it carefully and be ready to fight our way out," Captain Decker replied. "But we can't abandon those people based on suspicion alone." The Veil Nebula was a maze of swirling gases and twisted spacetime that played havoc with sensors and navigation systems. The Liberator moved through the cosmic fog like a ghost, its stealth systems engaged and engines running at minimum power. Zara monitored communications traffic, filtering through the electronic noise for any sign of patrol ships or security alerts. "Depot Station Karis, bearing 27 Mark IV, Nyx announced quietly. Scanning. I'm reading multiple ships docked, including 2 heavy cruisers. That's more firepower than Lyra indicated. Captain Decker frowned as he studied the tactical display. Maybe they increased security recently, or maybe our information was incomplete. Or maybe it's a trap, Zara said quietly, her patterns flickering with unease. Before anyone could respond, proximity alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The view screen lit up with weapon locks as ships emerged from the nebula around them, sleek vessels with the predatory lines of military hunters rather than the crude modifications typical of slavers. 4 ships unknown configuration, Nix reported, her voice tight with concentration. They're jamming our communications and charging weapons. So much for stealth, Finn muttered, his hands flying over his controls. I'm giving you everything. The engines have, but those ships are faster than us. The lead vessel opened a communication channel, and a familiar face appeared on the screen. Commander Vex Karras was a Zephyrian like Zara, but where her patterns pulsed with warmth and empathy, his flickered with cold calculation. His once beautiful features were marred by scarring that spoke of violence and pain, and his eyes held the particular emptiness that came from choosing cruelty over compassion. Captain Decker, he said with a smile that never reached his eyes, you've led us quite a chase. 5 months of tracking your pathetic rescue operations across 3 sectors. Zara's patterns flared with recognition and horror. I know him, she whispered. He was from New Zephyr. He disappeared years before the raids. Ah, little cousin, Commander Karras said, his attention shifting to Zara. How delightfully you've adapted to your new circumstances. But I'm afraid your freedom was never meant to be permanent. What do you want? Captain Decker demanded, moving protectively in front of Zara. Justice, Commander Karras replied. You've stolen property worth millions of credits from legitimate business enterprises. The syndicate wants their investments returned along with appropriate compensation for damages. Legitimate business? Zara stepped forward, her patterns blazing with anger she had thought herself incapable of feeling. You're talking about people's lives. I'm talking about property legally purchased according to the laws of dozens of systems, Commander Karras countered. Your bleeding heart rescue missions are nothing more than theft on a grand scale. The truth hit Zara like a physical blow. You're the one who gave Lyra the information about the depot. You knew we'd come. Of course. Your network has become predictably altruistic. Dangle enough suffering in front of you, and you'll walk into any trap. His patterns pulsed with cruel satisfaction. There is no depot, no 300 captives, just you. Walking into the web I've spent months weaving. Captain Decker's hand moved toward his weapon, but energy beams from the surrounding ships locked onto the Liberator's bridge. I wouldn't, Commander Karras advised. Surrender peacefully, and perhaps some of your crew will survive to see trial. Not happening, Captain Decker replied grimly. Finn, emergency power to shields. Nix, find us a way out of here. The gravitational anomalies in this region are too unstable for safe hyperspace jumps, Nix reported. But they might mask our sensor signature if we can reach the dense part of the nebula. Do it. The Liberator lurched forward as Finn diverted power from life support to the engines. Energy bolts from the hunter ships lit up the space around them, some finding their target and sending shockwaves through the hull. Zara gripped her console as the ship bucked and rolled, her patterns strobing with adrenaline. Hull breach on Deck 3, Nix announced, sealing emergency bulkheads. We're not going to outrun them, Finn called out over the sound of straining engines. These ships are military grade. Zara stared at the tactical display, watching the enemy vessels adjust their positions to cut off escape routes. Her months of studying their operations, of learning to think tactically, suddenly crystallized into understanding. The gravitational anomalies, she said suddenly. Finn, can you map the most unstable regions? Yeah, but why would we want to go near? His eyes widened with understanding. You want to use them as weapons. The hunter ships are faster and better armed, but they're also heavier, Zara explained rapidly, her patterns pulsing with fierce concentration. If we can lure them into the worst gravitational distortions, their mass will make them more susceptible to the effects, Nix finished. It's dangerous, but it might work. Do it, Captain Decker ordered. The next few minutes were a deadly dance through twisted spacetime. The Liberator weaved between gravitational whirlpools and temporal eddies, using its smaller mass and superior maneuverability to stay just ahead of the pursuing ships. Twice, enemy fire came so close that Zara could feel the heat through the hull plating. "Come on," she whispered, watching the tactical display as Commander Karras's flagship moved into position above a particularly nasty gravitational anomaly. Just a little closer. The trap sprung with devastating efficiency. The hunter ship's heavy mass caught the edge of the gravitational distortion and was yanked sideways into a temporal shear that aged its port side faster than its starboard. Metal screamed as the vessel tore itself apart under impossible stresses. Two more ships fell to similar fates as their commanders, focused on the chase, failed to respect the deadly environment around them. The last hunter broke off pursuit, its captain apparently deciding that discretion was the better part of valor. "Clear space ahead," Nix reported. "We're out of the worst of the anomaly field." Captain Decker slumped in his command chair, looking every one of his years. "Status report. Hull damage on 3 decks, but nothing critical," Finn replied. "We'll need repairs, but we can make it to safe harbor." Zara stared out at the swirling gases of the nebula, her patterns cycling through complex emotions. Relief at their escape mixed with anger at the betrayal and fear of what it meant for their network. "They know about us now," she said quietly. "Commander Karras, the Syndicate, they'll be hunting all of our operations." "Yes," Captain Decker agreed, "which means we need to be smarter, more careful, and we need to find out how deep this conspiracy goes." "What about Lyra?" Finn asked. "Was she working with them willingly or was she compromised?" "Unknown," Nix replied. "But we can't trust any information from her network anymore." Zara felt a strange sense of completion settling over her. 6 months ago, she had been a broken victim dragged onto an auction block. Today, she had helped save her rescuers and proven herself in battle. The frightened girl who had once pressed herself against a cell wall was gone, replaced by someone stronger and more determined. "There's something else," she said, her patterns pulsing with grim resolve. "Commander Karras mentioned a syndicate. If there's a larger organization coordinating the slave trade, then individual rescues aren't enough anymore." Captain Decker nodded slowly. "You're thinking we need to go after the source. I'm thinking we need to cut off the head of the snake," Zara replied, "before it grows back stronger than before." As the Liberator jumped to hyperspace, carrying them away from the deadly trap in the Veil Nebula, Zara stared out at the streaming stars and began planning for a war she was finally ready to fight. Breaking the chain. The hidden base on Sanctuary Station buzzed with activity as representatives from dozens of worlds gathered for what many hoped would be the final strike against the Syndicate. Zara stood before a holographic display showing the network they had spent 8 months mapping. A web of corruption that stretched across 3 sectors and involved everyone from petty criminals to government officials. Her luminescent patterns pulsed with steady determination as she addressed the assembled crowd. Former slaves, freedom fighters, sympathetic military officers, and even reformed criminals who had grown disgusted with the trade they once profited from. All united by a single purpose: to burn the Syndicate to the ground. The facility on Omega, Tertius, is more than just another depot, Zara explained, her voice carrying clearly through the crowded briefing room. "Intelligence gathered over the past 6 months indicates it's the Syndicate's primary processing and distribution center. Destroy it, and we cripple their entire operation." Captain Decker stepped forward, his weathered face grim but proud as he looked at the woman Zara had become. "The facility is heavily defended. Admiral Blackheart has pulled back most of his forces to protect it, which means this is our one chance to hit him where it counts." A Centaurian ship captain raised one of her 4 arms. "What about the captives inside? Our intelligence suggests there could be thousands. That's why we're going in smart rather than hard," Zara replied, manipulating the holographic display to show detailed schematics. Three-pronged assault. Team Alpha creates a distraction at the main docking bay. Team Beta infiltrates the detention levels to begin evacuations, and Team Gamma, my team, goes after the central command structure. Echo 7, the liberated android who had joined their cause 3 months earlier, spoke in his precise, emotionless voice. Admiral Blackheart's personal defenses include automated weapon systems and energy barriers. The probability of success for a direct assault is less than 30%. Which is why we're not assaulting directly, Zara said with a smile that would have seemed impossible on the broken girl dragged from Nexus Station. We're going to walk right through the front door. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. Using forged credentials and modified slave trader transponder codes, a small team would dock at Omega Tertius as if delivering new captives. Once inside, they would disable the facility's defenses from within, while the main assault began. It's insane, Finn observed as he made final adjustments to the false transponder signals. If they scan us too closely, or if our forged codes don't match their database, then we fight our way out, Zara replied calmly. But they won't scan us closely. Slave traders arrive constantly, and Admiral Blackheart's people have grown arrogant. They don't expect their victims to fight back with this level of coordination. Nix's holographic form flickered with concern. I wish I could come with you, but my data core won't interface properly with the facility's isolated systems. You'll be coordinating the fleet, Captain Decker reminded her. Without you managing communications and tactical data, the whole operation falls apart. The approach to Omega Tertius took 12 hours through the twisted space lanes of the Scorpion sector. The facility itself was a massive construct built into an asteroid, its surface bristling with defensive weapons and docking bays. Ships came and went constantly, a grotesque commerce in human misery that had operated openly for years. Zara sat in the co-pilot's seat of their modified transport, watching the facility grow larger on the view screen. She wore the disguise of a slave trader now, complete with neural control implants and the callous expression that marked those who trafficked in suffering. The transformation made her sick, but it was necessary. Transport vessel, profit margin, you are cleared for. Docking Bay 7, came the bored voice of traffic control. Have your manifest ready for inspection. Acknowledged, Control, Captain Decker replied in character. 23 prime specimens from the Kepler raids. Admiral Blackheart's going to be very pleased. The docking bay was exactly what Zara had expected. A cavernous space filled with ships of every description, from sleek luxury yachts to battered cargo haulers. Guards moved between the vessels with casual brutality, using shock prods to move lines of chained captives toward processing centers. Stay in character, Captain Decker murmured as they descended the ship's ramp. We're here to make money, nothing else matters. The inspection was cursory, a bored Rigelian official who barely glanced at their forged documents before waving them through. Within minutes, they were inside the facility proper, walking through corridors that reeked of fear and desperation. Zara's patterns remained carefully dim, hidden beneath the slave trader disguise. But inside she burned with rage at what she saw. Beings from dozens of worlds crammed into holding pens, children separated from parents, the sick and elderly left to die in corners because they had no commercial value. Processing center is down this corridor, Echo 7 reported quietly, his android appearance allowing him to pass as high-end merchandise being transferred. Central command should be 3 levels up. They split up according to plan. Captain Decker and Finn headed for the detention levels to begin quietly evacuating captives, while Zara and Echo 7 made their way toward the facility's heart. The android's ability to interface with security systems proved invaluable. Doors opened at his touch, and surveillance cameras mysteriously malfunctioned whenever they approached. The central command center was a testament to the syndicate's efficiency. Holographic displays showed the status of operations across 3 sectors, tracking everything from capture quotas to profit margins. At the center of it all sat Admiral Seren Blackheart herself, a human woman in her 60s whose cold eyes had watched the suffering of millions without flinching. Echo 7, begin uploading the virus to their main systems, Zara whispered, her patterns flickering with nervous energy. "I'll handle the Admiral." She stepped into the command center with the confident stride of someone who belonged there. "Admiral Blackheart, I'm here about the special shipment." The Admiral looked up from her displays, her expression shifting from annoyance to confusion. "I wasn't expecting any special deliveries today." "Change of plans," Zara replied smoothly, moving closer. The client wanted to inspect the merchandise personally. It was then that Admiral Blackheart's eyes focused on Zara's face, taking in the subtle luminescent patterns that marked her as Zephyrian. Recognition dawned slowly, followed by alarm. "You're not supposed to be here," she said, reaching for an alarm control. Zara's hand closed over the Admiral's wrist with surprising strength. "No, I'm not, but here I am anyway." The disguise fell away as Zara's patterns blazed with brilliant light, not the gentle glow of her people's natural joy, but the fierce radiance of righteous fury. "My name is Zara Vex. You destroyed my homeworld. You murdered my family. You turned me into property to be bought and sold." Admiral Blackheart's face went pale as she realized who stood before her. "The auction on Nexus Station, but you were sold to Captain Decker, yes, who showed me that I was still a person, still had value beyond my market price." Zara's grip tightened. "Who taught me that victims don't have to stay victims forever?" "Upload complete," Echo 7 announced. "All facility systems are now under our control, beginning lockdown of security forces." Throughout the facility, blast doors slammed shut, trapping guards in their barracks while escape routes for captives opened automatically. The carefully orchestrated plan unfolded with mechanical precision as months of preparation paid off. "You can't stop all of us," Admiral Blackheart said with desperate defiance. "The Syndicate reaches too far, has too much power. Kill me, destroy this facility, and 3 more will take its place." "Maybe," Zara acknowledged, "but this one ends today. And tomorrow we'll find the next one. And the day after that, the one after that. We'll keep fighting until beings like you learn that people aren't property." The sound of approaching ships rumbled through the facility's hull as the Liberation Fleet arrived right on schedule. Through the command center's viewports, Zara could see vessels of every description: military ships, civilian transports, even converted cargo haulers, all crewed by people who had decided that freedom was worth fighting for. "This is Captain Decker to all teams," came the voice over the comm system. "Detention levels secure, captives being evacuated. Zara, what's your status?" "Admiral Blackheart is in custody, and Echo 7 has control of all facility systems," Zara replied. "Beginning data extraction now. We'll have the locations of every Syndicate operation within the hour." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Over 3,000 captives were evacuated from the facility, ranging from recent captures to people who had been held for years. Medical teams treated the sick and injured while counselors began the long process of helping people remember who they were beyond their captivity. Zara found herself in the facility's main detention area, helping to coordinate the evacuation. It was here that she encountered a group of Zephyrian children, survivors from colonies that had been raided after New Zephyr fell. Their patterns were dim with trauma and fear, barely flickering as they clung to each other. "It's going to be all right," she told them gently, her own patterns pulsing with warm, reassuring light. "You're safe now. No one is going to hurt you anymore." One of the children, a girl no more than 10 years old, looked up at Zara with eyes that held too much pain for her age. "Are you here to save us?" "Yes," Zara replied simply. "And when you're ready, maybe you'll help save others too." The final phase of the operation involved the complete destruction of Omega Tertius. Once all captives and valuable intelligence had been evacuated, the facility's fusion reactors were set to overload. The explosion could be seen for light years in every direction, a beacon announcing that the age of unopposed slavery was ending. Standing on the bridge of the Liberator as they watched the facility's destruction, Captain Decker placed a weathered hand on Zara's shoulder. "You did it. You brought down the entire network." "We did it," she corrected, her pattern cycling through colors of satisfaction and hope. "All of us together. But this is just the beginning. She was right. Over the following months, the intelligence gathered from Omega Tertius led to raids across 3 sectors. Corrupt officials were exposed, slave trading routes were disrupted, and thousands more captives were freed. The syndicate's power was broken, its leadership dead or in prison. But perhaps more importantly, the operation had proven that victims could become victors, that the oppressed could rise up and break their own chains. A year later, Zara stood before the newly formed Galactic Council on Freedom and Justice, delivering her final report on the anti-slavery operations. She wore the uniform of the Free Fleet now, her captain's insignia gleaming beside the memorial pin she wore for New Zephyr. "The physical chains have been broken," she told the assembled delegates, her patterns pulsing with quiet authority. "But the work of healing continues. Every person we saved, every child we returned to freedom, carries scars that may never fully fade. Our responsibility doesn't end with rescue, it begins there." Behind her, a holographic display showed statistics that told their own story. Slave trafficking in the Outer Rim had dropped by 90%. Dozens of worlds had strengthened their anti-slavery laws. Most importantly, a network of survivors had emerged to help others heal from trauma and reclaim their lives. After the session ended, Zara made her way to the memorial garden that had been established for victims of the slave trade. At its center stood a crystal formation that sang softly in the wind, a gift from the rebuilt colony of New Zephyr, where survivors had chosen to return and start over. Captain Decker joined her there, older now but still carrying himself with the quiet dignity of someone who had chosen to fight for others when he could have looked away. "Any regrets?" he asked, watching the memorial crystals pulse with their eternal song. Zara's patterns cycled through the full spectrum of her emotions, the pain of loss, the joy of freedom, the satisfaction of justice served, and above all, the hope for a better future. "None," she said firmly. "This is who I was meant to become." As the sun set over the memorial garden, casting long shadows between the singing crystals, Zara Vex, former slave, survivor, liberator, and now guardian of freedom, began planning for tomorrow's work. There were still chains to be broken, still people to be saved, still a galaxy to heal. And she would be there, her light blazing in the darkness until every last chain was broken and every person was free.